Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Otolo's Early Careers session, our second series in a series of 4. We are here whether you are at the start of your career in hospitality, whether you're just thinking about a career in hospitality, or if you're pivoting mid-career and looking to try something different. We've assembled leaders from around the industry to come and share their advice, their wisdom, and frankly, their lessons on how they have got ahead and how they want to give back and help you achieve the same thing. So hopefully we'll make it a really kind of informative and useful session, whether you're catching us live or on catch up, whether you're catching us on social media. If you are watching live, feel free to ask questions on YouTube, on LinkedIn, wherever you're consuming this, and we'll answer them live on the show. Hopefully that'll be a useful feature too. As ever, please do head to Otolo at myotolo.com. We are entirely free for individuals community that has mentoring, connections. We're all about live events and getting people chatting and talking about how to build this industry back even stronger. So do feel free to sign up for a profile, join us as a mentor, join us as a mentee, just check it out and see what kind of conversations we're having. But we're not alone. And I've not only assembled my incredibly good-looking co-host, Craig Prentice, but we're very lucky to have Naomi Hollis and Luce Watson with us as well. So hi, everyone. Welcome to the stage. We'll do a quick round robin of intros, shall we? And then really, Craig, do set the scene for us. Naomi, welcome to the show. Maybe you could do a bit of an intro and share a bit about your background.
Of course. So my name's Naomi. I am the founder of a community called Event Grads, which is for event management students and graduates. That was founded in June 2020, just after I graduated in 2019. I'm also a project executive for Oddity Events.
Lovely. Luce, welcome back to the show.
Sure. So I am a marketing lead for Otolo. I am very interested, obviously, in early careers. Set this campaign up to really kind of give back. It's really been inspired by people like Naomi, to be fair, who've set up kind of micro communities and really helped kind of people get into the industry that they love or kind of just try it out and see if it's for them. Over to Craig.
Hi, everyone. I'm Craig. I'm the founder of Talent Partner Mum. We specialise in senior vacancies in the hospitality industry, and good to be back again today.
Good stuff. Well, look, let's get into it. So, Craig, today we're talking about, I suppose, getting yourself out there and starting that application, right? Jobs boards and where to start looking. Why don't you take it away? What are your kind of key learnings, your big lessons in this space?
I guess for me, it's probably split into sort of 5 or 6 areas. The job boards are just one part of a job search. Natural, people want to go to job boards and start searching for roles, but there's a ton of stuff that you can do away from that, particularly if you are being proactive and looking for your next move. I think there's also, having said that, it's also important to stay alert of for jobs and openings within companies that perhaps you've always aspired to work with in areas of the industry. So I think there's the proactive part, but there's also keeping eyes and ears to the ground always, because it's horrible when people do miss those opportunities. For me, it's all about connections. It's all about connecting with like-minded people, following companies that you aspire to, like I say, in key areas of the industry. And it's that old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know, for sure for me.
Very cool. Very cool. I really like your theme, right? Jobs board is really just kind of one piece of it. For me, I suppose the real conversation we're having is, where does hiring happen? Right? Does it happen with that anonymous click CV through the ether? Maybe I'll hear back, maybe I won't. Or are there other places that hiring happen, and how, I suppose, can you influence it? Naomi, you obviously set up a community a couple of years ago with exactly this kind of questions interesting to ask. What have been some of the big findings for you and your members in the last couple of years?
Yeah, for sure. So firstly, you're not alone. I think that was the first thing that came from it. We're a community of over 1,500 event students and graduates right now, and it was a hard time for hospitality and events. And we all came together and realized we were all having the same, maybe not issues, but the same kind of things were happening, in the application process, whether it was like the trying to find the jobs. And right now, I think one of the biggest issues is there seems to be a lot of jobs out there, and there seems to be a lot of applicants out there, but there seems to be a disconnect somewhere at the moment. And I don't know if that's with like the current grads or how that's going. but it's exciting to kind of see roles coming back, to be honest. And I think the pandemic especially, and what we've been discussing, is I think there might be a bit of a lack of confidence when it comes to applying again and your own abilities, because of, there's been such a we've been out of it for a wee bit of time now, so it's putting those that information onto paper, or however you're applying for these jobs. But that's what we've been kind of going through at the moment.
Yeah, nice. That lack of confidence, do you think we just don't know how to do it very well? Or is it like we just don't know what we do? Like, I know I'm not very good at this, or I don't even know if I'm not very good at this or not. Like, what's that? Craig, maybe you see it in candidates, Luce, what do we think is happening here?
I think there's a lot of information online and a lot of it contradicts itself, or it's how do you put your experience into words, and, trying to find the right answers. And I think in every industry as well, they look for different things. So for example, there was a rise in like creative CVs for a while, but then if the quality, what's the phrase for it? Not quantity over quality, but almost in those regards, that these creative CVs were coming out, but what was actually in these CVs? And I guess there's kind of that side of things. What about yourself, Craig? What do you think?
I was going to say, I think just we're so obsessed with time and the pace of life, and that whole on demand and the one click thing, James, like you mentioned. And there are great apps out there for hospitality jobs, and applying, I think it's a swipe left or right. I'm confused on that one, but there you go.
No wonder you're not meeting any interesting people.
I think they're great. I think they have a purpose. They definitely do the job. I've worked on them client side, but I don't think it replaces the relationship, and I don't think it replaces the genuineness of the relationship. Without sounding corny, I think grads have an amazing opportunity to network. I think they have an amazing chance to connect with people in businesses through their networks and communities like yours. And I think that's very exciting, I think, in itself. Just that, that whole idea of having a bit of a blank canvas and being able to create their journey and their story, I think is very exciting. I wish I'd looked at it like that when I was in my 20s.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, I suppose I feel like my LinkedIn feed is full of hospitality jobs, right? Events, restaurants, hotels, suppliers. It feels like the world's hiring crazy right now. And I think maybe that's probably that disconnect you're talking about. But I guess if I was just starting off in my career, or I was doing a bit of a pivot into, maybe outside my natural network, or just didn't have a network, they're not seeing those ads. They're not seeing that comment. So where should people be going, do you think, to try and stay on top of jobs that they would be into, do you think?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of places, right? Depends on what you want to specialize in. Obviously, some people want to kind of be more general, but there are kind of groups and micro communities out there for, like, if you're a chef, for instance, there's places like the Stock Canteen. Obviously, for events, you've got Naomi's Events Grad platform. There's lots of like different places, and then obviously there's the wider kind of hospitality sites like Harry, Institute of Hospitality, Counter Talk. I mean, there's literally dozens. I think me and Craig kind of touched on it earlier. It depends on kind of what you're looking for. If you're looking for that kind of longer term career goal, then it's probably quite good to reach out and build relationships directly through networking, through kind of recruiters, and actually get someone to invest some time in you. If you're kind of first starting out and you want to dip your toe in a little bit, maybe it's more of those kind of, shorter term placements almost. There's something called PlaceApp out there that is basically kind of smart and revolutionary app that places people based on kind of skills, experiences, and personality. It's not really CV led. But you can kind of go on short kind of placements within the industry and do that for a couple of months or a couple of weeks, kind of depending on how long you want to do it, and get a bit of a flavour. I think it's quite difficult. I'm sure, Naomi, you probably feel this way. Like when you first start out, you kind of know that you want to work in an industry, but you're not necessarily sure what you kind of want to do as a role. And I think sometimes it's kind of nice to dip your toes in a couple of different things and really figure that out.
Yeah, we touched on it last week, didn't we, about LinkedIn connections and messaging. I think, James, you mentioned, like, if you see a nice article and you like the person that, that's written it, you drop them a message and connect on a personal level. I think introductions are always good. So for me, one of the things that I always recommend is that if people have mutual connections and they can get an introduction, if the person is known well, that's always a good one. if they're applying for roles, and almost a bit of an unofficial reference or referral, really.
Yeah, I was on a really interesting call with a load of HR managers from a big hotel chain recently, and one of them compared it to, if you work in hospitality like hotels or restaurants, you really want your bookings to come direct, right? You want them to come on your own website or someone to call you or to walk in. You see the value in it, but you don't really want them to come through like an OTA, like a Booking.com or Expedia, right? You kind of pay your commissions. You don't really have the relationship the same way. You know, you're just one of many that they could have picked. And for the first time, someone said, hiring is just like that. As an employer, you could put an ad on one of these jobs board and you just get a sea of people who haven't really thought about you because it's so easy to book, kind of book with you, if you like, apply. Then you get people who come through your website and you're like, that's really interesting. You've obviously set up a profile on my website. You may have turned on notifications. That's really interesting. And then, to your point, Craig, you get referrals. And that's like someone emailing a GM being like, my friend Craig's coming to town next week. Make sure you look after him. Like, you are going to answer that email. So I wonder if there's a bit of a mindset shift that we just need to think about this a bit like we really are wired as an industry where, as a candidate, we need to be nurturing as close as possible relationship to that business. And if we are just firing off a CV, well, no wonder we're not necessarily getting really personal responses, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Craig,
and on the flip,
Craig's got. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, you've got really interesting insight on this, right? Like you very much kind of see treating finding a job as a project.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, like I mentioned it last week, but have a spreadsheet and have a hyperlink to those companies' job pages direct, so that you can once a week, once a fortnight, just click on it and see what interesting stuff is coming up. Same with the Google alerts. Find out about new openings. If you know that your favorite hotel brand is opening in your city through a news story or a Google alert, you know that they're going to have job openings coming up. Albeit 6 months, a year away, it's great to know if you are forward planning. Also, on the flip side of what you say about what I said about a referral, it's about working or connecting with the right recruitment specialists, talent partners, recruitment agencies that you feel an affiliation with, that they make time for you. I think that's really important. They give you the time of day. It's impossible sometimes. I'm talking from personal experience, and one of my frustrations sometimes not being able to see and speak and have coffee with everybody. And I do have to prioritize. We do have to prioritize with what's going on. But if you're good at what you do, if you're a natural fit for companies and job roles, I do believe that good recruiters will make time for you and strike up a connection and build that relationship. I've still got people that I work with now that I worked with 10 years ago when I started out. So
obviously when people are, I've already been an F&B director, that's what I want to do. I'm already in hospitality marketing, that's what I want to do. Recruiters are highly responsive. When you're, new to the industry, either early careers or a later career pivot, perhaps it's a little bit tougher to open the door to recruiters. What are your top lessons for like what you want to see as a recruiter when someone pops up? Like what floats the boat of a recruiter? Just make sure that you either get that first call and let the recruiter know what you're all about, or you at least get on their radar so you're in the system when things come up.
Gosh, what a question. I think individuality.
This wasn't going to be an easy session. We need these insights.
Individuality, passion, relative experience, whether that's industry or affiliated work. We spoke about work experience last week. I think that's really keen. And a desire to kind of connect, but in a very unannoying way. Unstalkerish or non-stalkerish. I think that would be it for me.
I think stalker is an interesting one to unpack a little bit there. I suppose there's an element of, if you are a hiring manager, is it okay for someone to come up to you at an event and say, hey, actually, I spotted that your firm is hiring. could you help me get my, this is me, could you help me get my application to the right place? Is it okay to drop someone a note online and say, hey, I see this? Or like, is that too much? Or is it the 10th message that's too much? Like where would you expect to be as a recruiter and perhaps as a line manager?
Depends which recruiter you're talking to about, I guess. It's, I don't know, it's, I think it varies for everyone. I think it's inappropriate to go up to an event and say that straight away. I think it's much more appropriate to go up, connect, say hi, have a chat about the event, just be you and be natural. I think, asking for the card and then following up afterwards, absolutely. But I think, you do have to be careful at events. People are there for that priority, that focus. Events can have various themes, and so I would personally shy away from doing that immediately. I would go up and connect, and that sounds quite tactic. It sounds like a tactic, doesn't it? But I think if you're genuinely at an event and connecting, then yeah, I think that's the way to do it.
Really interesting. Naomi, what have been some of the success stories of event grads? What do you think are some of the best practices in terms of, I suppose, getting noticed and, critically getting that job application in and that first interview?
Absolutely. I think, I don't want to say it's a success because it's me, but one of the things that I've noticed in the last kind of 2 jobs that I've had, people have come to me and said that they've noticed what I've done with event grads, and it showed initiative and it showed how proactive I am in the industry. And that's been a really telltale sign. So I think that adds to kind of what Craig was saying earlier about the things that people are looking for. The first one was a recruiter who noticed me on LinkedIn and then put me in touch with someone else. So if you're putting yourself out there and your skills, and I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't think it would get me a job when I started these things, but it's putting yourself out there and it's doing that kind of extra little thing that lets you stand out. And I think that's something that's, I think, something kind of adds that little bit to your CV. And especially when you're at that entry level stage, you need a little bit more than your degree or your certification to stand out in these situations. Success stories. I think networking is something that someone said to us recently in event grads, was that it's like making friends, it's building relationships. And I think networking as a young person is quite daunting. You don't really learn how to do it. You just get the hang of it as it goes. So when it comes to recruiters and recruitment, I think it can be a bit nerve-wracking because you're like, how do I reach out to this person? Or, what do I don't know. I feel like when you're kind of at that beginning, you don't really know what a recruiter is. And I think we spoke about this, Craig, so I hope that's not insulting. But when you're at that beginning career, you're like, you don't really know how that whole process works. So some of the kind of success stories we've had in event grads is people getting to know like the people behind the recruitment companies, or the employers behind the companies, and I think that's really the best way to go about it, because really they're getting to know you, you're getting to know them, and then you can kind of find that perfect merge.
Yeah, brilliant. We definitely talked a lot last week, didn't we, about like hobbies, extracurricular stuff in the industry. But I love the idea of networking. Is you're just making new work friends for now or in the future. I think that's quite a cool one. I'm going to ask the question because you just triggered it, Naomi. Craig, what is the value of a recruiter? Like, if I see a role on a website and I maybe also see the recruiter has it, if I know that recruiter is going to get paid for filling that role, am I better off applying direct? Like, talk me through why a recruiter is the right thing for my job search.
That's another question you never prepped me on in rehearsal.
That's not how this goes, Craig.
Gosh, for me personally, where I am in terms of what, the types of roles that I look after and the people at the level at what I now work at because of my progression in recruitment, it's knowing when people are discreetly looking. It's knowing people who will move for a certain type of role that isn't obvious. Mm-hmm. I think it's the discreet thing in general, I think, is really important to people at their careers at this stage. One of the best stories, one of my best stories is placing a sales and marketing director who, on paper and on LinkedIn, was previously a managing director. And I knew that person quite well, and I built a relationship with that person. he really only had his CV with me and probably one other person, and he missed being in-house, and he was agency side, so he was a creative, so he was working agency side. And in my head I knew that he missed in-house, and he would take a step back title wise from an MD to be a sales and marketing director any day again. And when I received a brief for an amazing business, I won't name, but I knew it was for him. And I remember sitting in a meeting with the MD of the company going, "Oh my God, I've got somebody amazing." And he was like, "Oh, don't tease me, don't tease me." And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so excited." And he was like, and that to me is gold. That's like priceless, because they would never have advertised that opportunity. Said candidate is absolutely amazing, and it was just a marriage made in heaven. I think I probably introduced 2 or 3 CVs, and he like stood out, and that would never have happened without that knowledge and without that connection and without that relationship. So I think that's probably nuts and bolts for me.
Yeah. If I flog my example one more time, you've got this kind of jobs board is like your OTA, is like your mass travel. You've got Booking Direct, which is kind of, keep an eye on jobs boards and Google stuff. Maybe recruiters are kind of like the travel agencies, right? And everyone was like, oh, travel agencies are going to have a tough time. But actually, if you've got a slightly unique setup, like you've got a group of friends you want to go away with, or it's a honeymoon, it's just a bit more special, or you just particularly want to do 2 or 3 things on an itinerary, it's still so great to have someone to guide you through it all. And also, if something is a bit of a hiccup, or you just want a bit of comfort, it's actually that kind of security blanket as well, right? Like if your interview doesn't go very well, but the person comes away really self-aware, with the right relationship, that recruiter can potentially help you get back to the table. I think that's really nice. I think the other point you mentioned is a good one, where I've definitely heard that recruiters will often put together a short list, and they're really comfortable putting through what you might call a wild card, which is actually, 3 of these revenue managers have been revenue managers before, but there's this one person who has just got a real intellectual curiosity, or has gone away and they've done these extra things, and you'd be crazy not to see them. And that's something you just don't have on an anonymous, click here to submit your job. So really interesting.
On that point, I worked with a hotel company about a year or so ago, who they were recruiting for a people and culture director, and again, this is not like me blowing my own trumpet by any means, but I do believe in wildcards, and I do believe in looking beyond the CV, as I said last week, and I do believe in making time for those people that are a little bit different. This particular person was desperate to get into lifestyle hotels, had a people operations background that's super culture focused, and no one would give her an interview or time because she didn't have that hotel background, and she was amazing. And the client that I was working with at the time, were open. When I met with them, I asked about curveballs and wildcards, and they were up for it. And they just wanted a human, somebody with that human touch and that strong people focus. And she was the one, and she got the job. And that again is for me is that's priceless.
Yeah, really good. They definitely say something like 80% of jobs are never advertised, right? So I think that's a big one. Luce, you've obviously made some great moves in your career. Like, what's been a couple of those kind of secret lessons or plays that you've made that's just actually a little bit different to just using a job board that's helped you take the next step?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when I first started out, I was really, really lucky, really fortunate. My first job I landed was Ministry of Sound, the record label. But they weren't hiring at the time, and I speculatively applied. And I was really lucky that the head of creative came back, and then a couple of weeks later, there was actually an opening for an administration role, so super entry level. Went in. I wasn't working at the time. I was in an internship. I'd sort of self-taught myself Photoshop and a couple of other things, which probably put me slightly ahead of other candidates. But they were also interviewing other candidates with experience. And it was just a couple of projects, side projects, probably very similar to Naomi, where I'd kind of taken some initiative around kind of my internship and volunteering. that really edged me forward. And then I was, as I say, I was really lucky to land that. Landing somewhere like that as your first kind of job sort of sets you up for the rest of your career in some aspects, because the name is so huge. And actually, I found it quite easy to kind of navigate and kind of cross navigate the industry. My background's quite vast in terms of like entertainment, fast moving consumer goods, marketing, events. I've kind of dipped my toe in many areas, hospitality, but kind of having that made it quite easy to navigate. But I think sometimes, I know Craig shies away from it a bit more. I'm probably the opposite, and I think Naomi's probably got a little bit of that fire as well. But actually, having a bit of boldness to say, actually, look, I'm doing these projects and I'm standing out and I'm being a bit different, and actually, I really value your company and my values are really aligned to yours and your ethos, and I really am invested in your brand and what you do, and you're kind of one of my companies that I really want to work for. There's some real value in that. I think, it's very, like you say, it's very easy to kind of click apply. You see it, right? We've all had it. We've had applications where someone's just copied and pasted, and they haven't even bothered to change the company name to the right company name, and the content's not that relevant to the job ad. But actually, when someone comes forward and actually does a little LinkedIn message or an email, or heaven forbid the old school of picking up the phone if there's a phone number on the website, I've had that a few times when I've been recruiting, and actually that really stands out for me, because it's kind of like, you've taken the time to find that number, you've taken the time to call up, you're trying to get that conversation in person. So that actually means you're quite serious about this job, whether or not your experience is slightly aligned. Similar to kind of Craig, it could be a wild card, but if someone's that invested, I think it's worth giving someone the time.
Yeah, really interesting.
Quickly, when you said that there, you mentioned about at least spelling the name right. The head of social media of Marvel is on TikTok, and she was hiring recently, and she was like, people were asking her for advice, and she was like, if you're going to say Spider-Man's your favorite Marvel character, at least spell his name right. And it was like, since then I've just been like, that's my reference anyway, because Spider-Man has a dash in it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I know.
Interesting.
Puts it into perspective a little bit.
Yeah.
The other thing for me actually is perseverance. I think me and Craig kind of touched on it earlier. We've got a couple of funny stories from people that have really kind of stuck by it. But I had someone when I first started out, and actually we're very, very close friends now. He works in hospitality as a GM, and he's kind of made his way through the industry. But when I was kind of running something very similar to Otolo years ago, which was kind of similar to events grads, finding your kind of events and creative roles entry level, he just kept bombarding me week on week on week, being like, can you place me? Can you place me? Can you place me? Eventually I gave in and was like, okay, I'm going to place him. And he turned out to be one of the best candidates I'd had, and has had a really successful career off the back of it. But it was his perseverance and making sure he was actually visible. There is a line, 10 messages is probably too much, and we laugh about it now. But if he hadn't have done it, I wouldn't have placed him. And actually it turned out to be an amazing placement.
Look, I 100% agree. I think there's really something about standing out. People who ask questions on shows like this, people who drop a note on LinkedIn, people who come along and put their hand up at events, or just leave comments. You just go, wow, I'll always remember that name, right? We're all that's how we're wired. And so I will come back to that, Luce, but it's really good. Let's kind of address a question that's just come in. This is about you being advised to tailor your CV to every role you're applying for. And obviously, Mikey, definitely recommend you go back and watch last week's webinar. We spent a whole hour kind of chatting through CVs. My top tip here is you broadly keep your CV the same, or maybe just have two versions of it. But what you change is your 2-line summary at the top. And then you can just actually make it really applicable to the role or something about the values of the company. Obviously, don't go out, if you're not one thing, don't say that you are. But I think that 2 lines is really what gets that first impression going. And that's not a lot to tailor. Be very careful about tailoring the whole thing. Super time consuming, and you'll probably forget that you've put some really relevant information. So yeah, I definitely had kind of 2 versions of a CV, but for me, it's that top summary line. Any other kind of quick thoughts on CVs? How tailored do you want to go per application?
I mean, I suppose this is an interesting one for you, Craig, and it's probably done more on, word search in terms of some of the back of house kind of tech that goes on for people like Harry and other platforms. If a job ad on a job board is really specific line by line, are we looking to kind of match those words line by line in the CV? Is that what the kind of software is picking up, or is there often a human on the other side of it checking it and kind of putting out those wild cards?
Again, it depends which company you speak to, I guess. Certainly when people apply, if I happen to advertise roles, it highlights the keywords, it highlights similar words, associated words. Yes, it will do. Very few recruiters have that software and ability, I guess. But job boards certainly do.
Maybe there's something about, there's often in bigger companies, if not tech, Luce, there's something about, it might be HR or someone who's not in that living, breathing that role every day, who's doing that first screening. So as much as they get to know the company and will probably be quite strong on values and maybe competencies, there's something about, well, actually the line manager really wanted someone who's sold something similar before, or someone who's worked in a big team before. So I suppose if the job ad is quite specific on a few bits, then probably there is a sense of reflecting that. Might be a good shout. But again, to Mikey's point, you might end up then tailoring for every CV, and I'd be really careful to unword stuff, because if you just keep adding to your CV for every role, you're going to end up with a 4-page CV with every adjective about jobs in the English language, and that's going to be really unappealing to read as well. I want to come back to. Oh, sorry, Craig, go on.
No, I was just going to say, going back to that kind of grabbing the attention at the top of the CV, I pulled up a CV of somebody that I worked with last year, and this person is a people manager. So, is all about people and culture, but in a very unpredictable fashion. And that's why I liked him. That's what got my attention on his CV. So at the top of his CV, he's got the words normal, not formal, in big letters, and then which instantly grabbed me. And then underneath he wrote people and culture, HR operations, employee experience, communications, for line by line. And then he literally said what I will bring on the left hand side and what I won't bring. And on the bring in side, it was humor, fun, realness, and a progressive approach. What I won't bring: perfection, formality, and a rule book, which I thought was a really good way of catching the attention.
Yeah, that's really cool. Really cool. The kind of thing that you'd normally get in a bit of a referral, right? Be like, Craig, give me 2 minutes on this person. Like, well, this is what to expect, but kind of owning it on your own CV. I love that. Luce, I want to come back to your proactivity piece, because if I set the scene of what's happening in hospitality, pretty much everyone is hiring, right? Whether you're going for restaurants, bars, event companies, or interesting startups in the supply chain and kind of vendor ecosystem, pretty much everyone is hiring. So if there is somewhere you want to work, you will probably be rewarded for, firstly, checking out their website, as we've been saying earlier, for job, but emailing one or two of the team with exactly that kind of message. But it's like, I really like you because of X and Y. I think I could really bring, 1, 2, 3. Be great to hear if you think of anything suitable. I remember we did an event on Otolo, and we had a startup founder come on, and he was like, if someone emails me and they tell me they love my startup and what I'm doing, and that they just want to help out anywhere that's useful, he's like, I always reply, because it's massaging my ego so much. Like, who wouldn't want to be told that their organization is great, really love the vision, want to join? You're like, oh, well, I'll definitely find something for you. And I think that's really interesting, especially, I might add, if you're kind of immediately available, right? If you've got nothing from holding you on, I would say start of the year, everyone's 2022 projects are kicking off. A lot of line managers are like, it might take me a couple of months to hire. If an email were to land in my inbox right now being like, I'm immediately available, I really love what you guys are doing at Otolo, if you've got anything I can do, oh my God, I can literally think of 3 or 4 things right now. So so take confidence from Luce's experience, from what we're saying. Put yourself out there, because everyone in hospitality is hiring. Everyone loves it when kind of they're flattered and told their company's doing a great thing. And everyone needs people now. So if you're sitting there immediately available thinking, well, this whole thing's taking ages, like, that's on you now, because you can get out there and you could be doing something within a couple of weeks. So I don't know, Naomi, what do you think? Obviously, you've got your event grad community kind of thinking about their 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to just take off what you were saying there as well, I think if you were to say you really enjoyed a company and you were lying, I think they'll see right through it. So don't do it for the sake of it.
Yeah, you may actually end up working at that company. So you better you better have a reason, and you better be truthful. But hopefully, if you've got to this stage, you're thinking, I do want to work at this company. Yeah, good shout.
Yeah, and don't waste your time otherwise. No, I think that's a really good point. And I think the proactivity side of it, again, it is just reaching out to companies. That's another thing. I think maybe the confidence thing, seeing what all is out there. I think a really good, like, what happens when you're looking for jobs, it's also research. Like, you're seeing what all is out there, you're seeing the opportunities that are out there. And I think in events and hospitality, there's a lot of roles out there that are not just event coordinator or not just like food and bev. Like, there's so many titles or roles that are available out there. There's so many organizations you don't even think of. Like, you can do hospitality in literally any sector, you can do events in any sector. So look out with the usual, or, you know, don't, with events especially, just sorry to bring it back to events, so it's most of what I know. When you bring it back to events and it's weddings and festivals that people are most likely into, look out with just festivals. Do you know what I mean? Like, look out with just these opportunities, or with hospitality, look out with hotels, and don't limit yourself when it comes to looking for these opportunities. Yeah, I think it's a confidence thing though, isn't it, as well? And it's getting used to what's out there and getting the hang of what opportunities are out there and how people hire. Because I think every organization, every kind of role hires quite differently. And even if there is, you know, your jobs boards and your recruiters and things, do that research and don't just, restrict yourself in that way.
I think applying for like stuff you wouldn't normally go for can be quite interesting as well. Like, I ended up at Copper Club and I'd never worked in the hospitality out there previously. Prior to that, I'd worked in events and festivals, something, you know, similar to Naomi. But actually, they were looking for an event manager, so it didn't matter to them that I didn't have hospitality experience. It was more about the right fit. But I could have sat there and gone, I'm not going to apply to this. There's no way they're going to take me. I have no hospitality background. But I tried it. I applied and I ended up landing the job, which was amazing. I think sometimes you can overthink it and sort of talk yourself out of it, but actually, give to Naomi's point, like, people will take transferable skills. I think particularly now, because everyone is hiring and wants to get talent into the business, like, it's probably way more about attitude. I think particularly in early careers, because you're building out that knowledge, and knowledge can be taught, right? Attitude and values can't. So if you can find the right company with the right value alignment and the right people and almost like the right tribe, then you're sort of halfway there. And actually, you know, people like ourselves are more than kind of happy to train the kind of hard skills.
Yeah, good shout. Yeah, I can definitely see, Craig, why you feel like this is a project, right? You find your companies and what kind of values, you've thought about what you want a little bit, and then there's a few ways to apply, right? You've got your jobs boards, but if you can, get it in with an email and obviously apply direct. So, great question coming in. Assuming you get that interview, but it turns out it didn't go well, what's your thoughts on feedback? I suppose, are people getting enough feedback, because that'll help them think about the next edit of their CV or the next thing they should apply for? Like, hey, this type of role just isn't for you. What's going on in this space, and should candidates expect? Craig, I guess we'll start with you from the recruiter perspective. Naomi, would love your candidate perspective.
I think anyone applying for roles should expect to be acknowledged and receive an update. I think that an applicant in this day and age, sadly, because of time constraints, should expect not to receive feedback on an application. If it's a one-click, if there's a relationship there or there's a personal interaction, I would envisage some kind of feedback on an application. I think that's probably the best way to look at it. Certainly, once you enter into a process, I think it is incredibly important to get feedback once you've been met, whether it's been virtually or not. I've been working on a project recently where the client and I are adamant about providing feedback for anyone that's been interviewed. And whilst there's been a delay arranging those feedback sessions themselves because of time constraints, it's been done. But it doesn't always happen. And, you know, hands up, I've forgotten people in the past. It is a mental time, and it is crazy sometimes. And, you know, things do slip through the net. I'm human. You know, other recruiters are human too. But follow up, do ask for feedback, because I think it's important. There's nothing to stop you sending another email for feedback if you have been there. I think it's really important.
It is. You get where candidates are coming from, right? It's the only way that they learn. But I think what you're saying is, like, if you're going through the mass job board route, probably not going to happen. If you go through a recruiter, yeah, there probably will be something because someone's put a bit of time and effort in. And if you go through a referral and you end up with a call, you almost definitely should expect it. And if not, it's certainly not rude to ask, is it? I think so. Look, especially if it's positioned well. Look, I really loved your organisation. I really felt like it was a good fit. Can you help me understand for the next one? What could I have done differently? In fact, I'm sure from time to time that might make people really think about their question, be like, and even if they reply like, "Hey, it was really just a not now," or "Hey, it just happened to be someone better." And I know, Naomi, you got absolutely this experience, right, where there was a no that became a yes a year later. But tell us your thoughts on getting feedback and how you would recommend approaching it.
Absolutely. So one of the best interview experiences I ever had, I didn't get the job. And it was I got into like the second interview, and it was just the people I was talking to, they were so laid back. They were like, it was a conversation, and that's what you want from an interview, really. Like, otherwise I get the fear. But it was really laid back. Everything was really good, and I didn't get it in the end. And I was really upset at the time. But I did message them, and I was just like, can I just get a little bit of feedback? And it took a couple of days, but when it came back, it was a good like 3 paragraphs of feedback. And the person that got the job had 7 years experience and I had none. So I was like, I'll let you off this time. But it was a really, really good experience. The feedback was really kind of in depth. And I know that won't happen all the time. It was a small consultancy, but that kind of transparency from a recruiter or an employer perspective, I think it's what candidates now, like especially kind of like that Gen Z, are looking for. They're looking for that transparency and that honesty. And I know it's again the time kind of side of things, but they really value that. And they also, it shows that they've been valued. And I think when you're going through the process, especially at an entry level stage or after redundancy and everything that we've gone on, and we've been firing out a ton of applications, you're trying really hard, and there's only so much it seems you can do at that stage. To not get something back can be really disheartening. And I think, again, Craig, I totally like the whole process was so difficult over the last few years. So it is that kind of where do you find that balance? But I do think it is really key, especially at that young stage, to try and get that feedback so that you can progress. I wrote what did I write? Some notes. It also shows you being proactive if you ask for feedback, I think. And I think it will show, like, if you've done really, really well, you've got to the interview, you just didn't get the job. You're like, can I just get some feedback? Like, I really enjoyed the process. You're also maybe remembered, and that kind of matches on to what you were saying, James. Like, if they, for example, a friend of mine got a job, didn't get a job through a recruiter, someone else got the job, but that person ended up quitting really early on. So they came back to that person. So you never know what's going to happen. If it is a no, it might just be a not now. But yeah, I definitely think chasing up is really, really key.
And what you've just described there is, for me, the perfect response for a candidate once there's been kind of an engagement and an experience of whatever sorts. The way you responded to me is perfect and essential, because that is very telling when you're dealing with people. I've provided feedback so many times and received a crappy response or a no response, and that person has never really been engaged with me again, or with with when I was in-house and here. And it's really telling. People's attitudes count for so much more now, and the way they respond to things. I think people need to be really mindful of that, not to burn bridges, that opportunities still continue to happen, some quite quickly, like you described, Naomi. So, it's not just about that role at that time, it's the longer piece.
Yeah. Long-term process. Yeah,
it's almost a cliche, isn't it? It's kind of like your every action is being not scrutinized but just observed, right, for its values. It's like the old cliche of actually, some companies might well ask the people at reception or who show you to an interview room, they might well say, well, actually, what did you think? And obviously if it's chalk and cheese, like they only turn it on for senior management, like that tells you a lot about how people treat you. So
that happened at one of the hotels I was at. They asked, like, how are they when they came in, and if you never think to ask the receptionist who sat you down before and called the person, like, from the minute you walk through the door.
Yeah, love it. And they're going to be in the staff room one day, so they need to be a core member of the team. And everyone knows if you're working on a great team, you're like, I can see why they've hired everyone here. That means I'm here for the right reasons. Whereas if you see a couple of people who are not quite fitting with values or pulling their weight, you're like, wait a minute, how's this being allowed to happen? Just to flip it though a little bit, Craig, I definitely understand where you're coming from, where, okay, why take the time to give feedback if it opens the door to, well, actually, I just didn't get a chance to show it, or I just, like that was on you, and I should, this is how I feel about it. Or worse, and tell me if I'm absolutely incorrect here. I once heard that a reason you don't get detailed feedback was a legal reason, because you could almost be done for, but is it libel? Is it blasphemy? The idea that actually we just say, you're not right for this. If you get a couple of words wrong in that copy, someone could be like, this is, I don't know, discriminatory. That you just, is there a nervousness among employers around giving feedback, do we think? And if so, is that okay? Does that need to be recognized by candidates? I'm in a minefield here. Help me through it, Craig.
Gosh, I don't think I've ever been told by a client that that is the case. And certainly when I've asked for feedback, people have always been willing to give it. Sometimes I think the answers are frustrating. That line that you used just a minute ago, James, of there were simply better candidates than you, is super frustrating for people. I try not to use it, but sometimes it does come down to that 7 years experience, Naomi, that, that person had over you, because that's what was important for the hiring manager. But I think genuine feedback, if it's given in the right way, positively, and if it's going to be received in the right way as a learning tool, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's critical. I think one of the things we did, again, when you hire apprentices and particularly get a lot of candidates, although it was a slightly standardized email, it was almost always true. The people we progressed with, unfortunately, did have a little bit more experience, which I know is challenging at an apprentice level. We go, you shouldn't have to have any, but if people do, then that's something. And the other thing is, instead of feedback, it's almost more of a top tip. No surprise, that's why we're running these sessions. That I probably didn't see enough extracurricular stuff. You want to get into marketing. I would have liked to have seen links to a bit of a portfolio. You want to get into design. I really should have seen some examples of that. And the point is, Craig, other candidates did, right? Yeah. So it's like, even if you feel like that's unfair, even if this is an entry level position, I can only apologize for how competitive it is, but I only need 2 candidates to have done really lovely online portfolios, show that they're being actively mentored, like show that they go to industry events and write blogs about it. I'm just like, I don't need to look beyond those 2. And that's even just putting some of that stuff in there. Not everyone has the time to watch this session. So maybe putting some of that stuff in there would be really helpful for recruiters if we're saying that people just are not hearing this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So comment come in, Luce, we'd love to get your thoughts on this. Like anxiety, mental health, it feels like there's a real challenge, isn't there? It is a lonely job, looking for jobs, and it is not great for things not to go well. Do you think feedback plays a part in it? And I suppose more importantly, what else do we think people can do while they're thinking about applying for jobs to, keep a healthy mind and stay positive?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think it goes back to that kind of finding your peer group, and obviously Naomi's platform is great for it. Our platform also serves a purpose with it. But I think finding like-minded people in a similar kind of situation, whether it's kind of age range or kind of perhaps experience level, that you can bounce ideas off of. I've certainly done it in the past, but I've been updating my CV. Sometimes I forget, I'm not very good at selling myself on paper. I'm very open about that. And I forget sometimes some of the experience I need to bring clear, to actually then bouncing that off a friend or a peer and actually saying, look, this is the job I want to apply to. Does this align? Is this working? And then getting some active feedback sometimes helps. I think just trying to kind of remember, back to Naomi's point, that you're not alone as well. Everyone's in the same boat. We've all been there at points, right? Where we've either started a job and we've not been sure, or we've been out of work and we're kind of looking, and it does make you really anxious. But I think the one thing about hospitality in particular is everyone's very people focused and everyone really cares. I think I mentioned it last time. If you reach out to people, 90% of people are gonna say yes and give up a bit of time. So actually, if you are struggling, reach out to Naomi, reach out to myself, reach out to James. There's plenty of people out there that you can kind of reach out to on LinkedIn. Reach out to someone that works at that company, perhaps that isn't the HR manager. Get their feedback on what the culture's like, what the company's like. Find out a bit more, dig a bit deeper, and you'll find opportunities kind of crop up. I think the one thing that I kind of always say to people is, you never know how a conversation is going to go. You never know where a conversation is going to lead. It's always worth kind of having those conversations, because you never know when a door might open and actually someone might recommend or refer or say, actually, have you looked at this? Go and get yourself a mentor. It's really valuable. And any of that kind of stuff. And going back to the point of networking, just create yourself a little bubble, create yourself a little community, because it will help with your mental health. It will help kind of ride out kind of any tough times. We've all been there. And I think, mentoring helps massively with it. People usually kind of find mentoring when they're struggling a little bit. But, find someone that you can kind of bounce ideas off of. And it doesn't have to be a formal arrangement. It could be a kind of one-off conversation, but I think those things are really valuable.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I almost don't know why we didn't say it sooner, but you're absolutely right. When you look at any document for too long, you just cannot see what you should be seeing. And I think just everyone should have one person that they just be like, look, this is the role, this is the CV. Like, what do you think? What am I missing? I think that's brilliant. We've actually just started this early careers group to kind of alongside this event series on Otolo. Maybe the next challenge should be like, post your CV, just like a bit of a like CV feedback session. Post your CV, ask what you're worried about, and just let's get the community talking, right? And we'll find out we've got like 100 plagiarized CVs now. But like, wait a minute, why do these all say the same thing? And I'm sure people would be nervous to be like, I found this amazing job at this hotel company. I don't want to tell anyone about it. But I think that's huge. I don't think I ever shared my CV with anyone. What an idiot. Absolutely should have done that.
Like, coming off Luce's point, like I find it so much easier to help on someone else's CV than myself. Like, I can see where you're not selling yourself, or I can see where you can add more action words and things like that. And it's harder to do it to your own than it is to do someone else's. It's the same as like uni work or college work. Like, it's so much easier to do someone else's than your own when you're reading it back, not when you're actually doing it. But yeah, definitely get someone else to read it. And I think Mikey, who's watching, knows this very well because he helps me a lot.
Yeah, well, that's why mentoring is so great, right? Obviously, a lot of mentees are like, oh, I'm pretty sure my mentor knows everything. I think those of us that mentor are like, actually, a lot of the time we're saying what we wish we had done, and we have still not got our stuff together, and we still worry about all these things. But I can sit here and be objective, and I can throw some, what good looks like your way. So it's so funny. It's so much easier to comment and support other people's careers, CVs, job applications, projects at work, whatever it is. And that's the crux of mentoring, isn't it? No one's got it perfect. The line managers of the companies you're applying for have not got it perfect, but what they do have is budget, a role,
and a job.
and a job. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, look, not far from the end of our time together. I suppose it'd be really good if anyone's got any final questions, feel free to ping them up. I thought there's some really good stuff to kind of trigger the conversation there. Luce, let's come back to our core topic, jobs boards. Where would you start? Give us your kind of top 2 or 3 tips for getting started, for where to look for jobs and how to get them.
Sure. So I think obviously there's a couple of obvious places for hospitality. One is the caterer, which I know Craig will be a big advocate of. But also a lot of hospitality outlets use Harry. So actually you can go onto Harry and set yourself up with a central profile. You'll see all the different groups that are recruiting on Harry, and then you can apply for the various roles. So similar to kind of what Craig touched on in the beginning, like setting yourself up with some Google alerts, some alerts on particular websites for brands that you do want to work for. So if there is a hotel brand you want to work for, or if there is a restaurant chain that you want to work for, get those alerts set up so that actually when they post a job, you're the first one hearing about it and it's coming into your inbox, rather than waiting and replying kind of 2 weeks later. And I suppose that's kind of, I guess, another key message that we probably kind of forgot to mention. Post-COVID, I'm sure Craig will agree with this, like there are hundreds of applications to roles, more than there ever has been. I hear it a lot from people that work in recruitment. We've had 10 times the amount of people apply for a role than we normally would, so, because people have kind of changed industries or kind of swapped roles. So actually setting up those alerts on LinkedIn and as well for kind of roles that you're interested in, so you get that digest kind of weekly or daily. Really important, because actually if a job goes up and it's only been up for 3 hours and 100 people have applied, Craig, you're probably only going to get through the first couple of pages. Am I wrong?
Yeah, and often they're taken down. They're taken down. Some ads or posts are taken down for that reason, because of the demand and the time constraints that either companies have or recruiters have. So yeah, definitely alerts are definitely key.
Love that. Naomi, what do you think? What are a couple of the big lessons there?
You're going to have to repeat the question because I had to answer my doorbell. I'm really sorry.
I was going to say, I heard that doorbell. I was like, I wonder if she can ignore this, or you don't want to miss today's Amazon parcel. No, all good.
It was like my boyfriend. That's the worst part.
We were just saying, the dog definitely can't answer the door. We were just saying, what are your last kind of couple of really top tips, I suppose, around job boards and getting started and knowing where to hunt?
Absolutely. Well, doing your research, obviously, to kind of begin with, but looking outside, I guess the same thing, like looking outside the usuals like LinkedIn, Indeed, that kind of thing, looking for specific jobs boards to the role in looking for. A couple of that as kind of examples that I didn't know about until I graduated was If You Could Jobs, and it's creative jobs. And it's a really lovely jobs board that I don't see their jobs like anywhere else. And then with like an event management, there's a couple of jobs board that I've started that look at your CV as well. So again, with Craig, getting recruiters to have a look at your CV and things like that as well, if that's part of their services, because that's obviously, they know exactly what to look for and what you're missing maybe, which is really, really good. And CV Library, if you get the chance, they do an ATS scanner. So if you put your CV through it, it tells you what automatic, is it automatic ATS, automatic something? Basically, what the big companies use to filter your CVs. It does that for free for your first one. So I would recommend doing that because that is something I did, and my CV was rubbish apparently. So it helps in that sense.
Perfect. I think for me, my two would be, and I only spotted this recently. Again, like I see jobs flying through my LinkedIn newsfeed every day. There's that new feature where you don't have to connect with someone; you can just follow someone. If someone's got enough followers on LinkedIn, which a lot of these big employers and senior leaders will have, just follow the company, obviously, and follow a couple of the key people that you've seen posting the jobs, and that'll automatically trigger in your newsfeed as if they were already in your network. So I think that's a really nice one. I think the other is got to be these new online communities, right? It is people like Otolo and Event Grads, if you're into more creative stuff, people like the Dots or Product School, if you want to get into kind of the tech behind hospitality. They are just the kind of places where once you've left a few comments, you're in the community and people can see you and things will definitely come up. We often see people posting, does anyone know anyone for this? And really cool stuff comes up. A bit of serendipity, but I think really starting with networks and that assumption that, yes, when jobs come up, they get filled fast, but also most jobs won't get posted until, people have tapped into their networks. I think that's really key. Craig, up to you to kind of wrap the session up really with your top lessons.
Gosh, I think I probably said it at the beginning, but don't obsess with the search. Treat it as a project. Be organized, have that project approach in terms of spreadsheet, whatever you want to use, with hyperlinks. Keep track of responses. Keep a tab on who you're chasing up, chase up appropriately, and spend time connecting with people who complement you and understand you and are going to represent you right. I think that's what it comes down to. Lucy and I had a conversation earlier about numbers, and people should be regarded as individuals with their own kind of backgrounds, experience, attitudes, etc. At the same time, I have a friend who's a very good big accounts director in sales, an account director who applied for quite a big job recently and was dismissed very quickly by a hiring person within an agency. And he went back pretty quick. He was perfect for the job, went back to the hiring person and said, listen, I'm perfect for this job. It's exactly, my profile exactly fits what you've described. Really sorry, we're not interested. You work in the finance department and we're looking for somebody who's a sales director or equivalent. And that person had just looked at account director and seen accounts and read that CV so quickly, presumably thought the person worked in the finance department. And it's silly, it's silly things like that can be overlooked quite quickly, and people should be held accountable and responded to like that.
I think we're saying it all along, right? 1 or 2 chasers and clarifications, and then asking for feedback, but make it a human process and be respectful. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Look, we have come, unfortunately, to the end of our time together, Craig. So that is our second kind of co-hosting session of the day. Luce, Naomi, amazing guests. Thanks so much for sharing your experiences. I should have been taking notes, but luckily we record these sessions and we can always come back to them. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed being on. It's been super useful to have you here. So next week is session 3 of our early career session. It's all about interviewing and culture, which I think, like, we're obviously teeing it up. It's super important. We're really excited to have a member of the Soho House group next week. We're going to be with Trudy Parr, who's from their new venture, Molly's. Just a wealth of experience, and I know has got some fun and controversial points to make, which is great. In the meantime, please do head to myotolo.com and join our early careers group. We will definitely be laying down this challenge of posting your CV and getting mentors and experts to comment. I assume, Luce, Craig, Naomi, you'll be first in line with your comments. I'll be close behind. That's fab. If events is your thing, obviously, as well as joining Otolo, go and hang out with event grads all over their Instagram account and keep an eye out for Naomi. Big thank you all. I'm sure it's been useful to people. Audience, thanks for sticking with it, and we'll see you all next week. Cheers, guys.